Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It was a cold, overcast Saturday in late October when 12-year-old Benji Dawson's parents threw him a surprise birthday party in the basement of their newly bought home, a creaky, century-old Victorian house nestled deep in rural Vermont. The family had just moved there 2 months earlier, and this was their way of settling in, introducing themselves to the neighborhood, and giving Benji the kind of celebration he hadn't had in years. They invited nearly a dozen kids from his new school, set up streamers and balloons, even hired a local clown named Mr. Jibbers, a smiling old man with a face caked in off-white paint and red lips drawn too wide. He had a scratchy voice, thick gloves, and eyes that didn't blink enough. No one really remembered hiring him. He just showed up a half hour before the party, said the parents had confirmed him weeks ago, and that his services were already paid for. Thinking the other had booked him, the parents shrugged it off. The show began with the usual tricks, balloon animals, a few clumsy juggling routines. But then Mr. Jibbers started doing strange things. He pulled out old, rusted toys from a duffel bag, a cracked porcelain doll with missing eyes, a wooden jack-in-the-box that wheezed instead of playing music, a deck of stained cards with odd symbols instead of numbers. He asked the kids if they wanted to play a game called Who's the Ghost? They all laughed and agreed. The game was simple. Mr. Jibbers would tie a blindfold on one child, spin them around, and whisper a name in their ear. They were supposed to wander around in the dark and find the ghost by touch. But after the first round, when little Jessica wandered blindly for far too long, bumping into corners and sobbing quietly, the adults grew uneasy. She finally stopped and pointed to Mr. Jibbers himself, claiming that the ghost had been whispering in her ear the whole time. The parents tried to shut down the game, but Mr. Jibbers insisted they finish all rounds. He grew more agitated, his voice colder, the painted smile on his face trembling. "It's not polite to leave the game unfinished," he said. And when the light suddenly cut out, plunging the basement into total darkness, chaos broke out. Kids screamed. Some tried scrambling up the stairs, only to find the door jammed shut. Benji's mom used her phone flashlight to scan the basement. Every child was accounted for, except Benji. They found the blindfold on the floor and a trail of smeared frosting leading to a crawl space that hadn't been there before. It was just a dark hole in the stone wall, wide enough for a child to squeeze into. Mr. Jibbers was gone too. When they called the police, they tore apart the basement, but there was no crawl space. Not anymore. The wall was solid stone, cold to the touch, as if nothing had ever broken through. 2 officers stayed behind after the rest left, disturbed by how calm the house felt. One of them, Officer Harris, swore he saw something on the old family camcorder that had been recording the party. He rewound the tape, playing it frame by frame. At one point during the Who's the Ghost game, while everyone else was facing away, Mr. Jibbers stared straight into the lens and whispered something under his breath. When they slowed the audio down, they could hear the words clearly. "He's ours now. He's been chosen, just like the others." Benji's family never found him. Every year on his birthday, the basement lights flicker, no matter what bulbs are in. And just after midnight, if you listen close enough, you can still hear giggling echoing from beneath the floorboards. The house is empty now, for sale. But every Halloween, a clown with pale paint and too wide lips is seen standing just beyond the tree line, waiting for the next birthday invitation.
Story number 2.
It was May 1997, and 12-year-old Marissa had never really liked birthday parties. Not because she didn't enjoy celebrating, but because every year, something small and strange always seemed to go wrong. A cake would fall. A guest would get sick. One year, her grandmother collapsed right before they cut the candles. But nothing compared to what happened the year she turned 12. Her mother insisted on hosting a party at their rural home in upstate New York. It was quiet, a little isolated, just a few houses off the long gravel road that snaked through the woods. They'd set up balloons, rented a bouncy castle, invited the neighborhood kids, and even hired a clown. His name was Tumbles. Marissa didn't like clowns. She never had. But her mom said he was highly rated and came recommended by the school librarian, so that was that. Tumbles arrived late, pulling up in a rust-red station wagon that looked like it hadn't been washed in years. He didn't speak much. His makeup was off, not professionally done, almost like it was smudged on in a rush. His smile wasn't painted wide and friendly. It was small and tight, like he was constantly suppressing a laugh. One of the moms whispered, "He gives me the creeps," but brushed it off with a chuckle. The kids gathered around for his show. He did balloon animals badly, juggled for a bit, dropped the pins, but then something shifted. He started asking the children strange questions. Who here has ever seen something they weren't supposed to see? Who talks to the shadows in their room at night? Who dreams of people standing at the foot of their bed? Most kids laughed awkwardly. A few grew visibly uncomfortable. Marissa remembers watching him kneel in front of one boy, Derek, a quiet kid with asthma, and stare into his eyes for a full 30 seconds without blinking. Then, softly, he whispered something to him. Derek started crying. No one could hear what he'd said, and Derek refused to talk about it after. He went home early, his mother looking visibly shaken. Later, as cake was being served, Tumbles vanished. His car was still out front, but he was gone. They assumed he'd gone to the bathroom or maybe stepped out for a smoke. Half an hour passed, then an hour. They checked the house. They called his name. Nothing. Eventually, they gave up and carried on with the party, assuming he'd left without saying goodbye. That night, Marissa's mom went to bed around midnight. At 1:47 a.m., the power went out. Marissa woke up to complete blackness and the sound of something brushing against her window. She thought it might be a tree branch, until she remembered her window was on the second floor. She got out of bed and crept to the glass. At first, she saw nothing, but then lightning cracked in the distance, and in that brief flash, she saw him, Tumbles. Standing on the roof just outside her window, crouched low, eyes wide, makeup smeared worse than before. His face was inches from the glass, and he was grinning. Not a clown's grin, something else, something feral. She screamed. Her mother came running, but by the time she got there, he was gone. No footprints on the roof, no signs of entry. They called the police. A full search was done of the property and the surrounding woods. Nothing. A few days later, they found his car abandoned a few miles away. In the trunk were several wigs, multiple clown outfits, each one slightly different, and a Polaroid camera. Inside were pictures of children, not smiling, not posing, just sleeping. All at different houses, different rooms. Some were old photos, others were fresh. One of them was of Marissa, taken just days before the party, while she slept in her own bed. Tumbles wasn't even his real name. The number he gave them? Disconnected. The company he claimed to work for? Didn't exist. No one by that description had ever worked with the librarian or had been booked through any of the usual entertainment agencies. He was never caught. Marissa never had another birthday party again. She never needed to. Every year on May 17th, without fail, she receives a package in the mail. No return address, always postmarked from a different state. Inside, a single Polaroid. A child asleep in their bed. She doesn't know who the children are. But in every picture, if you look close enough, just beyond the shadows, behind a curtain, in a closet crack, or reflected in a mirror, you can see a sliver of him. Still watching, still smiling, still out there, waiting for the next birthday.
Story number 3.
It was Emma's 12th birthday, and her parents had planned a small party at their old family house nestled in a quiet suburb. The house had been in the family for generations, but recently, Emma's parents had started noticing odd things. Lights flickering, whispers in empty rooms, the faint smell of something burnt. They brushed it off as old house quirks, nothing to worry about on a day meant for celebration. Emma's friends arrived just after sunset, bringing balloons, gifts, and laughter that echoed through the creaky halls. The living room was decorated with colorful streamers, and the birthday cake sat on the table, a bright splash of innocence amidst the house's shadowy corners. But as the party went on, strange things began to unsettle the mood. One by one, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into brief darkness, each time more intense and longer than before. When the lights came back, the cake had changed. The colorful frosting was smeared into twisted shapes, and the candles, which had just been lit, were now blackened and bent, as if they had been burned for hours. Emma blinked, but her friends were too busy giggling nervously to notice. Then a faint, guttural whisper drifted through the room. It wasn't coming from any person. It sounded like it was coming from the walls themselves. "Did you hear that?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her friends shook their heads, trying to convince themselves it was just the old house settling. But then the birthday banner above the fireplace began to twitch, moving as if invisible hands were tugging at it. Emma's mother hurried over, trying to calm everyone, but her eyes were wide with fear. Suddenly, the old grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 13 times instead of 12, its eerie toll echoing through the house. A cold breeze swept through the room, snuffing out the candles on the cake. Darkness swallowed the party. When the lights flickered back on, Emma was gone. Frantic, her parents and friends searched every corner, calling her name. Then they heard a faint giggle coming from the basement door, which was normally locked and had been all afternoon. The door creaked open on its own. Down in the basement, the air was thick with cold and the smell of something burnt, the same smell Emma's parents had noticed before. At the bottom of the stairs stood Emma, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark, a twisted smile on her lips. Behind her, the walls were covered in strange symbols drawn in what looked like ash. "Come play with me," Emma whispered, voice no longer her own. Terrified, the group backed away, but the basement door slammed shut, plunging them into pitch black. The last thing anyone heard was Emma's laughter, distorted, echoing, and chilling beyond reason, before the house went completely silent. The next morning, the house was empty. Emma's parents were found outside, disoriented and unable to remember anything after the party started. Emma was never seen again, and the old family house was abandoned, left to sit in silence, where no one dared celebrate a birthday ever again.
Story number 4.
It was supposed to be the perfect birthday party. Jenna had just turned 16, and her parents had rented a small, rustic cabin deep in the woods, far from the noisy city. The guest list was small, just her closest friends, and everyone was excited for a night of music, laughter, and a bonfire under the stars. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jenna's friends arrived, each bringing small gifts and smiles. The cabin's wooden walls echoed with chatter and the crackling fire outside. But something about the place felt off. Maybe it was the way the shadows seemed to stretch too long, or how the wind whispered strange, unintelligible sounds through the tall pine trees. After a while, Jenna's parents quietly left to give the teenagers space. The group gathered around the fire, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. Jenna's best friend, Lucas, pulled out an old, dusty birthday card he'd found in the cabin's dusty attic while exploring earlier. It was yellowed and fragile, with an eerie handwritten note inside. "Happy birthday. Don't blow out the candles." Everyone laughed it off as a creepy joke from the previous cabin owner, but Jenna felt a chill run down her spine. Still, she wasn't about to let some weird old card ruin her night. When the cake finally arrived, glowing with 16 flickering candles, the group sang "Happy Birthday." Jenna closed her eyes, made a wish, and blew out the candles in one swift breath. The flames went dark, and a heavy silence fell over the group. Suddenly, the wind slammed the cabin door shut with a deafening bang. At first, everyone shrugged it off, but then strange things began to happen. The lights flickered violently. A low, almost inaudible humming started, growing louder and deeper, like the growl of some unseen beast. Shadows inside the cabin stretched and twisted, shapes forming and dissolving faster than the eye could catch. Lucas suddenly cried out as something unseen yanked his backpack off his shoulder, sending it crashing to the floor. Jenna's phone died, the screen going black despite being fully charged just minutes before. Panic set in, but the door wouldn't budge. Jenna's calls for help were swallowed by the dense woods around them. The birthday card slipped from her pocket onto the floor. The handwriting inside seemed to change, the words twisting into a warning she hadn't noticed before. "You let the darkness in." The fire outside sputtered and went out, plunging them into darkness. Then the whispers began, soft at first, then growing into a chorus of voices, laughing and crying, calling out Jenna's name. One by one, her friends vanished, pulled into the shadows that now seemed alive and hungry. Jenna was left alone, trapped in the cabin with nothing but the cold and the voices. She could feel breath on her neck, hear footsteps just behind her, but every time she turned, there was nothing but darkness. Hours later, when Jenna's parents returned, the cabin was empty. No sign of the teenagers. The only trace was the birthday cake, melted and blackened on the table, and the birthday card lying on the floor. Its message now just a single line: "Next year, we'll celebrate together." No one ever found Jenna or her friends. The cabin was boarded up, but locals say that on certain birthdays, if you listen closely near those woods, you can hear faint singing and the sound of candles being blown out. An invitation from the darkness that waits, year after year, for the next birthday to come around.